Until now, the Dyatlov Pass incident has remained one of the most mysterious stories in history. Indeed, it has all the makings of a thrilling tale: a remote and beautiful setting, extreme conditions, a group of friends pushed to the edge, and a camera to capture it all. Recent scientific findings may shed some light on what really went on with the missing hikers. The Dyatlov Pass story starts in February 1959, when a group of experienced hikers set off on a multi-day trek into the Ural Mountains of western Siberia. Sadly, this was the last time any of them would be seen alive. The hikers were found again eventually, but their bodies were frozen solid and covered in strange injuries. The more the search party found, the more confused they became. One thing was clear: this was not a simple case of getting lost and freezing to death. When a search party finally stumbled into the remains of the Dyatlov group's last camp, they were horrified. In addition to the odd injuries, the frozen hikers were missing body parts, and unusually high levels of radiation were detected in the camp. Each discovery should have brought them closer to the truth, but the opposite happened. The more they uncovered, the more confusing the scene became. A troubling question soon emerged in the minds of the rescuers: who, or what, killed these young, fit, and highly experienced trekkers? When something happens that defies human understanding, conspiracy theories are bound to arise. The Dyatlov incident offers an interesting example of this phenomenon. 9 young, hardy adventurers were dead, and while Siberia is famous for its harsh environment, their camp offered none of the clues you'd expect to find. Instead, it was a place of strange and eerie anomalies. So, from aliens and yetis to political espionage, conspiracy theories began to spread. Decades after the discovery of the missing hikers, new conspiracy theories continued to emerge. It didn't help that the slope they died on was called Dead Mountain. Surely that's too poetic to be real, right? Well, that's what the conspiracy theorists thought anyway, and they had no intentions of calming down. The Dyatlov Pass incident soon became Russia's most famous unsolved mystery, inspiring theories of abominable snowmen, secret military projects, and even evil Arctic dwarves. Considering what happened to the hikers, it's perhaps poor taste to call this a cold case, but it's also 100% accurate. The mystery was never solved, but the conspiracy theories got so out of hand that 61 years after the incident occurred, the Russian government decided to do something about it. The Prosecutor General's Office of Russia released an announcement that thrilled the nation and conspiracy theorists the world over. They were launching a fresh inquiry into the deaths of the hikers to stop the growth of rumors and establish the truth. Russian investigators trekked out to Dead Mountain, and wild as this sounds, they reenacted some key elements of the incident to see if they could get to the bottom of it. This is an incident that has been mulled over, analyzed, and debated for decades, not just by conspiracy theorists, but also by respected journalists, scientists, and academics. Could the Russian investigators really figure out something these experts failed to catch? Perhaps one of the eeriest parts of the mystery is the fact that the hikers were documenting their trek with a camera. This camera was recovered from their final camp, and the images were mostly salvageable. So, we have a window into what went on during their final days on Earth. The photo you're looking at was, from what the investigators were able to gather, taken the day before the hikers died. You can see how heavy the snow was and how exhausted they were. This and other photos guided the reenactments performed by the new investigative team. Adding to the insanity of the situation is the fact that they used technology borrowed from the movie Frozen. Though it seems crazy that a reenactment expedition guided by a Disney movie could solve a 63-year-old mystery, it seems those intrepid researchers may have stumbled upon the truth. There's just one problem with the discovery they made: not everyone believes them. To fully explain the new discoveries made, we first need to take a detour back to 1959. In late February of that year, a search party set out to rescue the missing hikers. They had high hopes of finding at least some of them alive, considering how experienced they all were. At that point, the hikers were 8 days late, so it wasn't unreasonable to suspect that they were still alive. After all, they were in rugged terrain, so it wasn't all that out of the ordinary. The Dyatlov expedition was composed of young and highly skilled cross-country skiers, most of whom were students. An equally skilled search party set off, headed for Kholat Syakhl, which means Dead Mountain in the Ural region's indigenous language. It seems the indigenous Mansi people knew what they were talking about when they named the mountain. Soon after arriving, the search party saw that something had gone terribly wrong on Dead Mountain. In the picture below, you can see the slashed-apart remnants of the tent the search party found. Upon inspection, they determined that the tent had been slashed from the inside, the first of many mysterious discoveries. According to Mikhail Sherivan, one of the rescue party members, it was empty, and all the group's belongings and shoes had been left behind. Around the tent, they saw several sets of deep footprints, but there was something wrong about those, too. The snow was so thick that the footprints were deeply imprinted. A panicked trail of them circled the tent and then shot off away from it. However, just a few meters out, they vanished as though the humans who created them had been lifted up into the air. What could have driven the hikers to rip their tent open and abandon it? And, how on earth did their deep footprints just disappear? The snow was equally thick everywhere, and it wasn't like a snowstorm would have magically avoided the tent, leaving only those footprints intact. The tent discovery was made on February 26, 1959, which was the latter part of winter. At this time of year, the Siberian mountains can get as cold as -22°F, -30°C, so it's not safe to be roaming around at night. The rescuers had no choice but to put their search on hold until morning. They set up camp and spoke in murmured tones about the strange discoveries they'd made, all while sipping on a flask of vodka they'd found near the slashed tent. No one was excited about resuming their search the next day. Indeed, that search party member we mentioned earlier, Mikhail Sherivan, recalls one of his fellow crew members admonishing the others for toasting the hikers' health over shots of vodka. Best not drink to their health, but to their eternal peace, he apparently said. As it turns out, he was 100% right. When they resumed their search the next day, Sherivan and his colleagues had nothing but gruesome discoveries in store. The search party moved in methodical sweeps, searching the area around the tent. When they got about 1.5 kilometers out, they reached the edge of a forest where they found the frozen remains of 21-year-old Yuri Doroshenko and 23-year-old Yuri Krivonischenko. This picture shows Yuri Doroshenko, who was only 21 years old at the time it was taken. To modern eyes, he looks like a man in his 50s. We put this down to the fact that he was a rugged outdoorsman who was partial to vodka.